Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a really interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Holt Morpheus, which I cannot believe I haven't reviewed yet. This was sent to me by Scott from Sierra_bound on Instagram. Thanks so much. Give him a follow. It's worth following him just to check out his collection because it's truly impressive. But also because it's, because of people like him that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content, specifically knife content like this. These aren't necessarily the easiest things to get, though it's my understanding that as of the moment of this recording, they're actually taking orders for these. Like I went to the website and I saw it looked like you could order them. So I went ahead and tried, and sure enough, it looked like it would push my order through. But their lead time, I think, is quite a ways back if I'm interpreting it correctly. In any case, I will link the website down below so you guys can check these out if you want. Understand that these are custom knives. These are small batch, in-house USA knives that are heads and shoulders, multiple heads and multiple shoulders above what you're gonna get from somebody like We Knives, even when we're looking at the same materials. So when you see that price tag, understand that's the price that it costs to not only, if you're going to operate a business, make this stuff in-house USA. They do not stock these things in mass quantities necessarily. So that's what this type of stuff costs. This tier is definitely up there with Koenig, with Herman, Shurgoroff, etc. So that's what you're paying for. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of the Morpheus here. Really nice finish on that. I can't wait to talk about this. Overall length coming in at 7.5 inches. Blade length is coming in at 3 1/4. Cutting edge is coming in at 3 1/8. This is very, very similar to the Haptic, which I just reviewed. The Haptic has a slightly longer blade. I think it's a 1/4 inch longer blade, but really, really similar. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales you see can be found in the description under Original Goat and Others. So up against the AD10 and the AD20.5. This is very similar in overall length to the AD20.5. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? And the Hogue Deca. Again, close to the size of the Hogue Deca, but the Hogue Deca is a little bit longer. And then finally, let's put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. Once again, much closer to the size of the Para 3. How is the action? Well, it's a Holt, so these are just ridiculous. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. I mean, what I consider to be perfect action is actually, a few steps back of this. Not only is it smooth, but it's controlled. I do like the control of this a little bit more than the Haptic. The Haptic has that sheep's foot blade, unless they offer multiple blade styles. The one that I handled has a sheep's foot blade, and I think it was heavier out at the end. This is a hollow ground drop point blade, and it's not quite as heavy out at the end, so the action is both beautifully smooth and extremely controlled. It's perfect. It's also tunable. The Holt detent is tunable, so you can get these exactly the way that you want, and the flipper tab shape is accommodating, when we're talking about a number of different detent tunings. So whether you like it heavier or lighter, that flipper tab is going to work with you and not against you, which is really, really cool. There is no double clutch, and this is a recessed titanium liner lock, which I much prefer to an exposed frame lock. This is a fairly narrow frame, so I think that just works beautifully. The action it's beyond perfection. I mean, it will, the snootiest, the most critical of, action critics will still be blown away by this. They will still be blown away by this, 100%. Let's do carry profile up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see it's about the same. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. Yeah, this is just going to be a beautifully easy knife to EDC day to day if you want to. Now, you might be asking yourself, what's the point of doing this? Nobody's really EDCing these knives, right? Actually, that's completely wrong. Many people who buy knives in this territory actually do use them. I think the vast majority of people on this planet wouldn't use it, but that's also, to say that is to say the vast majority of people on this planet wouldn't buy this, right? So when we talk about the people who are actually the target consumers of this product, A huge chunk of them actually carry them. In fact, Scott owns a user version of this knife, and then this is his non-user, which is very, very typical of people who buy and collect knives in this territory. So yeah, he has a user a user Morpheus and a user haptic. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if he has a user Spectre as well. But yeah, that is factually true. And if you actually are able to ask somebody who regularly buys stuff like this, you'll find that to be the case generally. So this is beneficial, I think, for people who, can see themselves using it. They want to actually know, how it pockets. So anyways, let's go ahead. You know what? I'm not gonna do a hardware check. This is still an expensive enough knife, and it's a non-user from Scott, so I'm not gonna touch it with my tools. But as far as I can tell here, we have a T10 at least. Pivot, it could be a T15. I mean, either way, like, are you gonna be unhappy with T10 or T15? And then we have T8 body screws and just a couple. This is a beautifully simple knife to take apart and maintain, which I think is a really important element of these knives that are not only, kind of in the enthusiast territory, but also are still well within the, user parameters. It's important to be able to take apart and maintain your knife if you want to. So that's really, really cool. I'm glad they're not locking us out with proprietary hardware, which is all too common in this territory. I'm also not going to touch it with my calipers. Again, because it's not mine, and it's obviously meant as a pristine, version of this. But comparing with the 140 thousandths of the Spyderco PM2, you can see here that this guy's much more likely to be 125 to 130, which I think is appropriate on a knife of this size. Let's go ahead and weigh it. So what we're looking at here is titanium with a little bit more titanium for the liner, and then we have an M390 blade. The weight on this guy is, oh man, it's almost exactly what I guessed when I guessed the haptic, because the haptic I reviewed had some zirconium in it. This is about 3.77 ounces, which is pretty good considering we're looking at a nearly 3.5-inch blade. So I don't really have a problem with that. The balance on this knife is a little bit back of the pivot, right about here, but you're not going to notice that in hand. Honestly, it just feels perfect. Meat and potatoes time. Oh man, I love the ergonomics on this. We have a classic handle profile, little tiny bit of, I'm trying to look at this like straight down and judge to see. I think this is actually flat, but because this is a slight taper, it gives the feeling of contouring. The edges are knocked down at the corners and chamfered in the right place, so you really are holding on to something that is very, very comfortable. The pocket clip is on the shorter side, which is huge applause from me. I don't know what it is with certain companies thinking that we need massive extended clips on these knives. We don't. This is plenty of clip, and it's well past the 50% line of the handle. It's also a milled titanium clip with the edges knocked down. It's a really cool shape too. I think it goes really well with the whole Holt aesthetic. This is just essentially a perfect milled clip, right? Nice ramp underneath here. The bill is a bit long back from where the ramp starts. I think the ramp should be closer, like the peak of that should be closer to the center, so it's a little bit more likely to sort of rise up to meet the seam of your pocket, but I'm sure it works just fine. And I really don't have a problem with it. I've handled and carried many knives with very, very similar clips, and they always do a great job. So that's awesome. I love the texture pattern here. You have a few different options for texture patterns. I noticed they used to do like a knurling or a diamond pattern. They didn't have that option on their website. I missed that. I think that was really cool. It was one of the coolest texture patterns you could get, at least for the Spectre, however many years ago. I still don't own a Holt, and I will someday. I'm waiting for the exact right variant. This is very, very tempting, extremely tempting. But all of the milling patterns are going to be beautiful, all of them. And in some cases, I don't think right now, but in some cases you'll have the option for ano. In this case, we have that really cool blue to indigo where you turn it and it changes colors and you're not sure, is it purple, is it blue? Really, really nice. Love that. The handle is essentially perfect. I have seen some versions of these with pivot collars. I think they would all look good. Like the pivot collar that was on the haptic was really, really cool. I think it would look awesome on this as well, but I don't know if they do that standard. The blade is really just it's about as perfect as you could get for an EDC blade. This is what they call a near mirror finish on this M390 hollow ground blade. And then what we have, I'm just shining it up here for you guys real quick. What we have is also a mirror polished final cutting edge. Now let me tell you, that gets thin and that thing is ready to go. They are also heat treating their M390 very well, so this is a performance blade. This will perform, and it will perform noticeably better than a lot of drop point blades, right? Not only in the same competition zone as this knife, but a lot of knives in general. This thing is gonna cut, and it's gonna cut efficiently. Nice tip, beautiful, consistent edge too, right? It's just awesome. The blade is just absolutely beautiful. Moving on here, I don't know if we talked about the access to the lock bar is very good and there's no double clutch. I mean, it's about as good as you could hope for. You could sit, I mean, if you're just going to buy this knife to like flip it over and over again, this is a dream. I mean, you could flip this 1,000 times and no part of it is going to bother your hands, right? But of course, using it in an actual user setting that's very accommodating there too. The backspacer is really cool. I love that they mill out parts of the frame to match with the milling in the backspacer. That gives that an extra dressy look where this would otherwise just be like a flat or partially textured backspacer that's just kind of a nothing area. There's just a nice little detail here. I like that. The pocket clip flows perfectly, integrates perfectly with the rest of the frame. It is nested into the titanium. Look at those bevels there. God, that's cool. And then we have a hidden screw underneath holding it in. It is on top of a textured surface. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. It is on top of a textured surface, but it's not a super aggressive textured surface, so I wouldn't worry too much about pocket fraying. We also have texturing on the clip itself, which is really, really nice. We have the stop pin is actually located on, oh, it does say, hold on. I can hear my kids fighting upstairs. Sorry about that. M390 here, printed on the back of the blade. And then we have the stop pin attached. You can barely see it in there. It's attached to the blade and riding on channels on either side of the titanium. That's probably the best way to do that because they're hidden. No need for external stops. They're hidden on the inside, but you still get an extra point of contact versus a single traditional stop pin. So a little bit of added stability, which helps with centering and lockout and maintaining a perfect action. So it's just extra that cherry on top that you can actually adjust the detent and really get this thing perfect. Absolutely laser perfect centering, which is really cool. It's risky to do a U-shaped backspacer because if the thing is off center, it really highlights it. I think Holt is basically, saying, hold my beer, no problem. We can get those things perfectly centered every single time. And they do. I've never actually handled a Holt knife that wasn't perfectly centered, whether it was brand new or sent to me from, actually every single Holt knife I've ever had on the channel has been loaned by a viewer, and they've all been absolutely perfect. The lockup on this thing, I'm going to try to, got a glove here. I really don't want to touch the blade with my bare hands. The lockup is completely and totally solid. No blade play, no lock rock, no lock stick, no detent latch, no double clutch. Incredible, incredible action here. It sings a little bit when it closes. Let's see if I can get that. I'm going to show you guys. That's just great. I love it. Beautiful. For those looking for that small batch, American-made, all in-house knife with all of the trimmings, all of the extra embellishments, all the stuff, right? But you still want a knife that is at the very least capable and would work as an EDC knife, right? It's kind of like, people who, maybe you collect classic cars. You love the hypothetical performance of the thing, right? Maybe you collect classic muscle cars, or maybe you collect modern, sports cars or whatever. The idea of the performance is, it's a really fun thing to think about, but you like keeping it pristine. You like just parking it in your garage and looking at it. There's plenty of people who do that, and for some reason, that's much more understandable than collecting a pocket knife that is not going to get used, right? Well, if it's easier for you to think about it this way, think about a very rare sports car that doesn't get raced. It's just parked in the garage, right? If it's easier for you to think of it like that, then think of it like that, right? Whether or not it makes any sense to you, these people who do these types of things, who collect these types of things, they exist, and they have for a very long time, and they will continue to exist for a very long time. So whatever your reason is for buying this, right? If you want to use it, if you don't want to use it, right? It's got all the stuff that you want, and it is extremely competitive in its actual, competition zone. This knife is not competing with WE knives using the same materials. It just isn't. The target market isn't the same. It is highly competitive in its actual competition zone, which again, in my opinion, is Brown, Koenig, Schirgroff, and Herman, right? This is some of the nicest stuff that you can get in this territory. And the base price on these, at least according to the website, appears to be $875. Now that has definitely gone up over time, but then again, so is everything. If I was going to spend $800 to $900 on a pocket knife, you bet I would be looking at Holt knives. It would be a very difficult decision. There's not a lot of stuff that I think is worth looking at in that territory, but this is definitely one of them. So if you're going to do it, look at Holt. In that sense, I do recommend this knife, right? But I want to make this clear. I don't recommend this knife to everybody. In fact, I recommend this knife to very few people. You do not need to spend almost $900 to get a good knife. But if you're looking for a knife of this quality tier, this has a lot of elements here that are embellishments, that are extra things that, the common user doesn't need. You can get a good tool for about $50 these days. If you're looking for a good tool and nothing more, you obviously don't need this. But if you've been past that point on the ladder, right, most people who are actually considering buying this have a firm understanding of what utility looks like. They are no longer interested in the utility aspect alone. They are interested in the extra of the extra. They've already climbed past the $200, $300, $400, $500 tier, the $600 tier. They're wanting to know what's next. It's this. And it has been for a bit. People know that about Holt, right? So to those of you, if you feel like I'm describing you, this is for you. I would recommend this to you, right? But to everybody else, no, climb the ladder. I mean, if you're just looking for a basic pocket knife, I got a playlist called Cheap Knives I Like with about 200 plus uploads. There's a whole bunch of knives there for you. But this, in my opinion, is not built for those people. It's built for people who want the extra. So it's going to go in my recommended playlist with an asterisk, right? It's recommended for those people. But I'm also going to put it in my favorite knives of all time playlist because I love this model. Holt Morpheus is spectacular. Very cool. Thanks again to Scott, Sierra_bound, for loaning this to me and letting me share it with everybody. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.